Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian, joined as always by my good mate Lockie, and the Blues have finally secured their first win of season 2025 against the West Coast Eagles. After what we saw in round one, this game was never a foregone conclusion, Lockie. So that win for you, was it just pure relief to come away with the 4 points? How did you kind of absorb that performance and that result?
Relief is definitely an emotion that was felt. As always, it was a roller coaster of emotions, chatting to lots of different people throughout the game, going on that roller coaster with them. But relief is definitely one that comes to mind. Not one that Vossi wanted to use, but it's one that I'll use.
Yeah, it felt like it was more relief of not losing than it was winning the game, weirdly, in the
That's really
sense
true.
of relief. But look, again, after round one, there was still a part of every single Carlton supporter that was saying, again, if anyone can lose this game, it's us. Just please, just get the 4 points. I kind of, as much as I do want to see a good performance, just get the 4 points. Let's move on and start the season afresh from here. But look, we know, Lockie, a win was never going to be enough for many. Maybe it's you as well. I'm keen to unpack this because it felt like one of those games where no performance, no result would make the people happy. You know, after our poor start to the season, people were going to always pick holes in the performance, not allow themselves to be happy with anything that they saw against West Coast. So because everyone's very quick to start and say it's only West Coast, we need to do this against North and then against better opposition. Are we allowed to have both sides of this, Lockie? Can we be happy with the win, but also want for more? How are you balancing, I guess, those two realities right now?
Yeah, I really love this topic. I definitely think you can have both sides. I mean, for me, there is a world where I walk away from this match and everything, and it was a perfect performance. Like, a 100+ point win where we are accurate in front of goal and we're confident across the board and those kind of things. So I think that was a reality that could happen, and we'd be satisfied at least with the performance on the day. That isn't how I felt. And going into this game, just to win wasn't going to be enough for me either. I think knowing who West Coast are, and if that was a competitive game that went down to the wire and we scraped through with a win, like by a goal, I think we'd be sitting here being pretty negative. I am positive, but it definitely wasn't all positive.
Yes. No, I think I'm in the same camp as you. I'm very much enjoying this win because this start to this season has been horrific, and mentally, I've just been so down on Carlton. Everything has just been a drag, so frustrated, constantly thinking about every facet of this football club. It's why last week we didn't review the Collingwood game. We did a deep dive into everything going wrong because that's all our brains were doing as Carlton supporters was what's going on with the board, the president, the CEO, the list, everything. Just needed a week where we could breathe. We didn't have to worry about any narratives, sacking coaches for a week. We could just relax, sit in it. So I think for me, I needed a win just to mentally switch off a little bit. But then, like I said, on the other hand, I can watch that and still understand there's a lot that needs to be fixed, a lot that needs to be done. But ultimately, I'm just going to be grateful for the win for a week. Now, maybe after, if we beat North and there's still this performance, I'm going to go a little bit harder because I haven't had that little sugar hit. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that are just straight up not happy and not allowing themselves to enjoy a win. And I've seen some commentary on that, and I've seen a lot on social media where people are just constantly bringing up the negatives, not satisfied. And that's still valid to a degree, but I don't know. And I'm keen to know your thoughts and everyone watching and listening to this. Role as a fan is to just enjoy the highs and lows. And I don't know, if you can't let any of yourself be happy after winning any game of footy, I just start to wonder whether following sport is for you. It's kind of like what we talked about in the mentality of fans last week and just trying to be happy with being positive. You can do both. And it's just such a strange thing where I feel like there's a narrative of you're either in one camp or the other. And if you say you were happy after that win, then you're completely ignoring all the things we need to improve on. And then the same other people that are just pointing out all the flaws, that they're not also allowed to be happy. It's such a weird environment right now as a Carlton supporter. So yeah, I'm very happy
Yeah.
to continue to discuss these points.
Yeah. I mean, I don't feel like I fall into either of those. I feel like I'm on the probably in the middle because it was really enjoyable watching that fourth quarter. Like I felt so calm and there was lots of nice moments and it was great to see Vossi happy and he looked relieved in after the game and that kind of thing. But I also it was 29 points at halftime. So let's say that the margin got out to 40 and then they came back and we ended up winning by 8 points. I don't think we would have we'd be talking about just taking the win, right? Or do you think that you would still be just grateful for the 4 points then? Because I think I would be pretty down if that was what happened.
Yeah, I think it definitely changed the perspective a lot. There'd be a lot more down on things. It's always whatever that recency was in any game will completely change your perspective. And I think the positives that I kind of took out of this game and what I was happy for, and maybe this is telling of where we are currently, felt like it was a lot more individuals and little things rather than this collective group performance that I was so happy with everything. It was, this, and we'll touch a bit like Matt Carroll, Corey Durden, all these little things were what I was taking away from the game rather than, wow, we systematically destroyed West Coast. And that probably is just why we are where we are right now.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good thought. I mean, we'll get to our votes towards the end of the episode, but like there was just so many of those individuals that I was so happy for. Like the leaders stood up, the young guys like built on the confidence, the middle of the pack did well. So yeah, it was really positive from an individual stance. I like that take.
Yeah, so at least let's start on the positives because now that we've finally got a win, we can talk about them. It doesn't feel too weird to do so. Obviously, the tough thing with this and the caveat of a West Coast in their development stage at the moment, we've been there where it almost felt like we were still there to start this season. It's good to know there is at least gap between us and someone on the AFL ladder right now as far as ability. But the big question is, what can you take away from a performance against opposition that is unfortunately just not that quality right now? So, yeah, what can you take away and what are your main positives from this game?
Well, I guess the number one thing that I was hoping for going into this game was that it was going to be the catalyst for confidence, both like as an entire group and for certain individuals. And that's why at quarter time I was feeling icky because I could like you could just see the lack of confidence in so many guys in individual plays that happened in that first quarter. But then by the end, when I look holistically, I think we can say that, yeah, I think it was a step forward in terms of the confidence that the group will have had. It was the perfect week for us to get a game like this, in my opinion. Like we needed this, like a game that was like this. So I think we can say that it's positive from a confidence perspective.
Yeah, no, I cannot imagine if we were in Melbourne shoes having to play Essendon 0-4, gather round. Oh, goodness, that would have been horrific. So it was nice to at least get West Coast this week, but I think confidence is a massive thing. We've spoken about it a lot this season in the way that we're just so fumbly, poor executing basic skills. Now, that was still there to a degree, but being able to get something tangible from this, individual stepping up, getting goals, getting moments, getting a win, and at least in the back half, really taking the game away from your opposition and just enjoying footy again. You could see there were smiles on their faces, and it was something I've been trying to listen to more interviews of coaches and just to try and get little bits of people I'm fascinated in and I really respect their opinions. And one thing that Adam Kingsley often talks about is just trying to make footy fun. And like, if you're not enjoying it, that's a big, obviously, telling component of you're not going to play well. And I get when you're losing, it's hard to still enjoy your football, but it's about doing your best to do so. And a game like this just gets you happy, gets you back up and about. And Just gives
Yeah.
you a week to breathe. And now they can go into that North Melbourne game going, okay, look, it's West Coast, all of that in the review mirror, but we did it. We showed we could do it. We're ready to go now. And on that, I think it was
Mhm.
important that our leaders stood up in this performance. The midfield impressed. Cripps was playing some better footy. Wiedering obviously there the whole time,
Yeah.
but guys like Walsh finally stepping up a gear and having one of his better games. I think it just goes
Yeah.
a long way when your top 6 or 7 are performing, which all of this season, while everything else has been bad, we have not been getting anything out of our top end.
100%. And I think about guys like, I mean, we had a decent discussion last week about like the 4 talls in defense and how shaky McGovern particularly has been this season, and then Haynes kind of in a secondary way. And that, yeah, we can still have the discussion about whether we want to persist with the 4 talls, but at least it was such a nice circuit breaker for them, for Gov to kick his goal. You know, his use by foot, like 668 meters gained. Like, it's just such a nice little boost for those guys as well.
Yeah. Were there any other big positives for you? Any other key takeaways from this win?
Well, I guess I kind of made a note on what I was just saying then about Gov, which was, I'm keen to hear if you have a perspective on this. So from a statistic point of view, between Gov, Sard, and Cottrell, there was 56 kicks and 11 handballs.
Mm.
And then on the other side, Walsh, Chera, Cripps, and Hewitt all had more handballs than kicks. And it just feels like that's kind of been the formula that I've been dying to see more of. It feels like our best users were kind of the ones putting the ball on their boot, and that the midfield mix kind of more leading by hand. I think that was kind of a positive that I took away. It was like, yes, I love seeing Gov having 20 plus kicks in a game. Cottrell's use I thought was excellent. So that was a positive that I took away.
Yeah, it's interesting balancing the way we're playing at the moment. Clearly, they want this more kick, chip through an opposition game style, which can work in this day and age. You look at Brisbane and the way they do it, changing their angles to then create space and move across the entire field. Our issue clearly is, do we have those players? And then, like you're sort of touching on there, when it gets to that, when we break the line and it gets to the midfield, that's when it needs to be the short, sharp handballs, gliding through an opposition, moving the ball quickly. Feels
Spot
like
on.
a lot of the time it gets stagnant when it hits that point, and then it is just more kicks from guys who we don't trust with the ball in hand to make those right decisions and to execute. So to get the balance better this week, I think was impressive. And just, again, it's West Coast, but we need to see it. These boys need to know that they're still capable of it.
Yeah.
I'd be happy. I would not be happy if we were reviewing this game and we hadn't seen any of these glimpses. So I think it's still important to, with whatever caveats you want on everything we talk about, to still just mention it and bring it to the
I know.
forefront. And yeah, I just thought the fluidity and what we were trying to do for most of the game felt right. Whether the execution was there or not, felt like we were going fast when we needed to. Probably after the first quarter. I think the first quarter was a little bit, we were just going too fast and we were trying too hard to
Agreed.
make everything happen. Once we slowed it down, figured it out, there was a better blend. Was that something that you
Yeah.
noticed compared to other games? And where have you seen, I
Mm.
guess, that mix so far this year?
Yeah, that's that's a really interesting point. I guess, yeah. I mean, that's all we want from this game is it's not about saying that what we saw in this game is just going to be replicated week on week now. It's about, like, are the things, yeah, are there things that we can build on with that? Like, just to go back to my point from a moment ago, like seeing so many moments of it being like Williams being the one delivering inside 50, Cottrell being the one delivering inside 50, Walsh being the one inside 50, like creating those leads. Like, it's all these things that, I don't know, just all kind of coming together as I think that they should, which is, I think, good for us to work on. I mean, that's kind of what I started by saying about the first quarter versus the rest of the game. Like, it felt like the confidence was low and we were frantic, and yeah, we probably were going too fast, which, yeah, felt like, I don't know, maybe just putting goals on the scoreboard helped, and just kind of easing into the game, I guess, meant that
Mm,
we were able to have a bit more of that balance, which is what it's all about at the end of the day, us being able to do
mm.
different styles at the right times.
No, 100%. And while this maybe isn't a positive, but feels like the discussion is leading to this perfectly, the way
Mm,
we were moving the ball inside 50, you touched on guys like Cottrell that were, I thought, really impressive and a big step up from what we've seen recently, looking for
yeah.
those short leads, lowering the eyes rather than blazing away. Now, obviously, there was inaccuracies. The connection wasn't there all the
Yeah.
time. Some of the execution wasn't. But what did you make of the way we were trying to move the ball inside 50? Were you more impressed? Were you happier with that sort of short kicking? Or is this just something that,
Mm.
because of West Coast, because of the space, we can do it in this game, but you're not going to see it in others?
Yeah, well, we saw it in the West Coast game last year, didn't we? When we were that
Mm,
kind of depleted team and we were finding targets inside 50 wherever we wanted. So, yeah, you have to take that with a pinch of salt. Um, it's just all about the variety to me. Like, we want to see that happening at times. I thought this was one of the better games for us in terms of going inside
mm,
50. We weren't just biting off those short kicks every time. Like, we were giving Charlie times to go to work. Sometimes he, would take the contested mark. Other times he got beaten. I think that's just going to happen. Um, yeah, I can't really remember too many times where those short, shallow kicks were intercepted, which,
mm.
yeah, you can take that again both ways. Is that us working it out? Is that because of the opposition? But I don't know how you can't be happy with, at least
Mm.
it was better, but, you know,
Yeah. Oh,
goes without saying.
it's something Voss can finally show the boys and go, this, do this. See, you can do it. This is what I've been asking you to do. Keep going. Do this every week. And feels like for most of this season, it's probably been a lot of footage of here's all the things you're not doing right because
Mhm.
there's no strong connection. So sometimes you do need those games. And someone whose performance really impressed me, I'm sure it did for everyone. Matt Carroll
Mhm.
makes his AFL
Yeah.
debut and really tough run to get to AFL. Obviously, overlooked in the national draft, gets picked up as a rookie, injured all of last season, so he doesn't really get a chance to even show if he can play at the level. Gets delisted, but gets told there's a bit of a lifeline. You can train on with the club and potentially get a list spot. He signs on and makes his debut, and I thought he was one of our better players. Just if you were to tell me who was playing their first game, I'm not sure I would have picked him out there. It was really pleasing at a time where, and again, it's one game, it's against West Coast. No one is saying he's going to be a 250 game superstar, but we've been asking and questioning development quite a lot and asking who are these next kids that can step up? Is there anyone to get one, make his debut and impress?
Mm.
I think that has to be a positive. What did you make of Matt Carroll's
Yeah.
game?
Yeah, it's a really good one. I mean, yeah, I last year had absolutely no idea about who he was, like what his role was going to be in this team and that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, like Vossi said in his press conference, which I had listened to with very closely,
Good for you.
um, he was like they wanted to get him into the team at some stage soon. So it was great that he got to have his go,
Mm,
and yeah, hopefully they persist with him because
mm.
yeah, really positive.
Yeah, no, it's like his disposal isn't always amazing, but I think what's really good is that he's that kind of player that wants to take the game on. And if he butchers a kick, it doesn't matter. He will just go again. It's like the Ted
Yeah.
Lasso, be a goldfish. That feels like it's Matt Carroll, where he isn't carrying the baggage of a past mistake. He just kind of lets it go. No, I'm just going to keep doing it because I know I'm capable. And some of his delivery was absolutely beautiful, changed some angles, loved what I saw. And if he can develop and be this player, it's exciting because he's kind of that mid size that can take a mark, can play a little bit taller, but also is nimble enough to
Yep.
have potentially him and Cowan, who I think are kind of in that similar mold. Something that our backline probably really needs, these shorter complementary players, particularly if we're
Mm.
going the four talls for the short term to long term. I think it's really, really positive. And on the youth and bringing in a few, obviously there's sort of Carroll, Cooper, Will White are a few that have come
Yeah.
in. Obviously, it's easy to talk about it now as a positive, but do you think this is something we've maybe needed to be bringing in over the last few years? These little sprinkle of youth to take us forward. It's difficult to look back at how many of these kind of players we have had over the last 3 years. Right now, it doesn't feel like there's been a lot of them, but I feel like for us to evolve and take that next step over the next 3 or 5 years, having these couple of players every single season is a really big deal. And I'm just not sure we've had that in recent years. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on just that little sprinkle of youth right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to comment on those other couple guys to go on from Carroll as well. It was great for them both to get their goals. Very nice moments. Yeah, I feel like last year in particular, that felt like a year that we didn't really blood any youth. But was there guys that you and I were dying to get in?
That's kind of like the question, yeah.
Yeah, because 2023 was Ollie and Cowan's first year, and they were thrown in the deep end from round one. So it kind of feels like they've already been staples in the team longer than they really have. So I mean, it is obviously a positive thing. We were so excited for Jagger to come in and be, part of that next generation. I hope they persist with these guys now. I'm not sure what changes you'd be making this week, but I'd be keeping them all in.
Yeah, and it's this interesting thing because obviously when everything's going bad, my first thing that I go to is list management. It's what I love. That side of football goes from me playing FIFA my whole life and loving the career mode, loving the build of lists, as I'm sure many will. So it's very much this, well, how can we fix it? What can we do to take us to that next step? And while you look at the age demographic of us, it's probably more in line with, bringing a Houston in last year and bringing in those ready-made players. But I think where I'm starting to see a lot more and looking at what other teams have done over the last few years, I feel like there is still such a big importance on hitting the draft and making sure you're doing that and not going too far away. And I wonder, and again, this is a whole nother episode in its entirety, but when we have been able to bring in guys like obviously Sard and Chera, and it's that opportunity cost of, we haven't had a lot of those first round draft picks. It was kind of finally Motlop, there was sort of Carroll throughout that period, Durden, who I want to touch on next, but there wasn't a lot of those high end draft picks that we were bringing in throughout that period that right now would be starting to go into their peak. So I guess what I'm kind of getting at is, I know we don't have a first round draft pick as things stand right now, but my opinion would be, let's revitalize this list with a hit of youth. Let's get a few of these high-end players like we did with Jagger Smith. I feel like that is the strategy to get us going. And I know that it didn't necessarily go all the way, but it just reminds me of Port Adelaide when it felt like they were kind of there or thereabouts, sort of middle of the table to lower. And all of a sudden they bring in, Butters, they bring in Rosie, and it just takes you forward a little bit by bringing in those high ceiling-esque players. So I feel like that's our kind of next move right now. It's made me think, okay, let's give the youth a chance over these next few years.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I think Collingwood's going to be a fair case study of that as well. The ones that ended up landing Houston. You look at the youth like in their team, and it is scarce. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because we've kind of taken different routes potentially.
Yeah, 100%. And the one player I really want to touch on in this is Corey Durden. I mean, that was an electric performance. By far the best game he has played for Carlton. A guy that just hasn't had a lot of consistency because of injuries. I can't remember the last time he's played 6 games in a row. I'm not sure if he ever has, to be honest. Now, is he going to produce that output every single week? Probably not. Hopefully he can. But I
Maybe.
think that was big for the confidence of him and everyone just to know, okay, I'm capable of this. I can get that done.
100%.
What did you make of Corey Durden's performance this week?
Yeah, I had admittedly low expectations going in for him in this one. So yeah, it was great for him to get an early one on the board. It was great that he was efficient on a day where a lot of others weren't. And he was just slotting them through the big sticks. Loved his second goal, just like that play of like bring everybody outside the 50, isolate him on Duggan deep, Cripps just chaos ball it in. Like I just love that as a little play. So yeah, very happy for him, of course.
Yeah, it was funny because I think the
Showing
last time
Butlock
he
how to do
played,
it.
yeah, well, the last time he played against West Coast, I think was the first time he'd come back in after a long layoff, and he didn't kick those goals, but he looked impressive. I remember thinking, wow, he's fast. He's adding a little bit to us. And then kind of the next couple of weeks, we didn't see a lot from him. So hopefully this time he can continue to take that step. But we're crying out for a small to do something, to hit the scoreboard, look a little bit classy down there. And what I can say from Corey in that performance was took his chances, and the goals looked easy. A lot of the time with Carlton,
True.
we work so hard just to get a shot, to finally get a goal. Our goals don't feel simple. And most of Corey's felt simple. So that was a big tick for me.
It's
And
really true.
yeah, I think we just need one of these guys to step up. And any glimpse of that, I'm going to be positive. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, well, come on, Corey, do it for me for a month. Of course, we all want that. But you've got to just enjoy it while you can and take those little moments and be positive, because we've been depressing this entire season. I'm going to be up and about because who knows? We could lose the next 10 games in a row. And I'll be thinking, man, I should have been way happier during that West Coast game because it was the only chance I had. So that's what you're going to get from me right now. Any other big positives?
I'm going to throw Charlie in there.
Yep.
I think you might look at his stats and think maybe not a great game from him. He's obviously not back to his full self yet, but 2 goals for. One was that hitting the post from outside 50 after the fend off, which would have just been a highlight reel Kerno goal. And then that other one that was touched by a fingernail. So easily could have been a 4-goal 2 performance. And yeah, just felt more confident. Loved him getting outside 50, getting the ball in hand up there, running up and taking marks. So just hopefully a positive sign that he's still on the right direction to getting back to who he was.
Absolutely love it. The only other positive I guess I had was we won and kind of dominated a game without much influence from DeConing, who has arguably been one of our best players this season, one of very
100%.
few. So knowing he kind of didn't have any output for us, and we were still able to have everyone else step up around him was perfect. Because if you told me, oh no, TDK has a really bad game against West Coast, I'd say, oh shit, we've probably lost this game. So that was a big positive for me. And you touched on it, but I just wanted to give a big shout out to Will White finally breaking down the door and getting that first goal. I was very worried for where that was going to go for him, like a young player that needs that reward, and it can sit on you for quite some time when you keep missing, and that starts to get in your head. So for him to just give that one away to Cripper that he probably could have had himself, the footy golds to then land back in his lap a few minutes later, get one through the big sticks, just relief for him, just really good positives. Hopefully he can now hit the ground running with a bit more confidence.
Absolutely. I love that. And I guess the one last positive to throw out there, just to not be understated, is I think just winning every quarter.
Yes.
Because at 3/4 time, I was texting with our man Robbo, and I was just like, I just don't want to be let down here by us fully taking the foot off the pedal and then making it a little bit more respectable. So I'm glad that we did put the foot down in that 4th quarter and made it a 4-quarter performance.
Yes. Well, let's move towards the negatives.
Go on.
And I want to start with one, and that is simply, you kind of alluded to, our second halves have been a big issue throughout this season, clearly. Even though I would like to maybe say it's been a really lazy narrative, because I don't have the stats in front of me, and I've never brought this up on the pod. I can't believe it, but it was like, Carlton have 51 plus points in first halves. I'm like, wasn't 40 of that in round one? Like, I know we
Love
were
it.
leading it every half, but it was like by 2 points, except the Richmond game. So it felt like this very flawed stat saying, oh, we're up by 50 points. You're going, if you take one game out of it, our first halves were like plus 10. That's not great. Obviously,
Well
the
said.
back half was bad. But I think the first halves being good was a little bit glorifying it. But second
Good
half
one.
begins. You're a little bit nervous because we haven't kind of taken the game away from West Coast. Liam Ryan kicks the first goal. He then, seconds later, almost puts through a second. How were you feeling at that point of the game? Were you shitting yourself thinking, oh God, it's happening again?
I wasn't. I wasn't. I don't know. For some reason, I've just felt, well, I shouldn't say for some reason. I have felt incredibly confident all week going into this game. I just could not foresee a future of you and I standing here on
Well, I'm
Sunday
sitting.
breaking down a loss. You're sitting. I'm standing. I couldn't foresee that. So, and maybe that's, really ignorant of me to feel that way. But yeah, it would have taken a few more goals, I think, before I would have started feeling nervous. But I can understand the PTSD that would have been experienced in that moment.
Yeah, see, I'm happy it worked this time, Lockie, because just before the game, I put a little bit of money on West Coast to win and always to kick two. So I went again, and luckily, it didn't happen, Lockie.
Unbelievable.
Didn't happen. That was the thing. I think I needed, because I obviously, long-term listeners will know, I did it against Richmond just in case. Because if we lost somehow, I'd have something to be positive about.
And now you've
Thought I'd do it
retired
again this time. I think particularly as well, it was the Matty always. I was like, if they win, he's kicking a bag. So I just need to not be too upset when that happens. So luckily, I think we can put that to bed now. It's not going to happen. Yeah, myself when that first goal went through, I think if he'd kicked the second one, I would have been genuinely starting to panic a little bit. But I think overall, I still thought we'd win. It was more just a case of, God, this is going to be another grind. Like the first two quarters have been, we just can't get that true confidence in our true self showing. And then what all the questions go off the back of that if we're only able to beat West Coast by a couple of goals rather than what we did.
Totally.
Would have been a lot worse. But what for you, because I think we said earlier to start this, a lot are in the opinion, Carlton supporters, that there's a lot of issues and, a win over West Coast doesn't paper over the cracks. There's still glaring problems that we need to discuss. So what for you were those glaring issues or negatives that you took out from this game?
I'm going to be very specific with my first one. I hope that's okay. Because I've watched these two plays back like 10 times in slow motion, trying to understand them. And it was the Eagles' first two shots on goal. Allen's goal and Waterman's miss. Both, which were West Coast moving the ball from deep defense to easy marks inside 50. I just could not understand why. So the first one was after the Motlop holding the ball, if you remember. People go back and watch these if you're, on your KO or whatever. Cottrell is jogging over to mark Graham, who's got the ball. Don't know why he's kind of just like jogging along. That causes Sard to cover Cottrell's man over the top. Inexplicable to me why Cottrell did that. And then with the Waterman miss, which was from a kick out, pause your screen on your KO. I know I'm being very specific here, but there is literally just one extra West Coast player on the right side of the field, and we've got one extra defender on the left side. And then bang, mark shot on goal. And so that was the point for me where it's like 5 minutes into this game. Two such simple things. Aren't we switched on today, boys? We've got to come out firing here. We're not switched on.
Yeah. Look, those are great. I'm annoyed you didn't have the exact time stamps. I felt like you were having them ready, that those areas so well. But no, I was not as specific as that, but I definitely had Eagles cutting us up through the middle from their back half far too easy throughout the game was a glaring issue. And is some of that down to us playing such a high line and being so aggressive because it's West Coast? Like we don't play that high against everyone else. But I think you can say, on the other hand, we've allowed teams to do this to us quite often. How many times from kick-ins do teams just move the ball through us? So I think it's still clearly something that needs to be addressed. And maybe one thing I'll throw out here as something that needs to change. Have you noticed that a lot of this seems to be there's a breakdown somewhere on the field, and I'll highlight one player because he does it a lot that I notice, but others do it as well. It's a lot of, I'll run to the guy in front of me, which just creates space behind. And Adam Saad does this a lot. He goes quick to try and close the space, but then it's just handball over or kick over to the next one. Next guy pushes up, space, space, space. I feel like at some stage around the field, no longer can the pressure come from the front. You have to let pressure go from behind and just make them run at you and say, we'll guard the entire, D50 here, but we're not going to let you just keep lobbing it over our heads. We give away far too many run inside 50 goals because we're so heavy with the press. I don't know if that's directive. I don't know what that is, because sometimes we do chop things off, but I feel like there just needs to be a line in the ground where it's at this point, it's stand back. And if you want to kick it from 60, go for it, but we're not going to give you any other options.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with what you're saying, and I think it has to be the directive. That's the defensive scheme. But that's exactly what I mean by the first example that I said. I know I'm calling him out here, and I thought he had an awesome game. But please watch the replay back. If Cottrell sprinted in that moment, Saad doesn't have to do it. You watch Saad. Saad had to make that decision because Cottrell's not on his man, inexplicably. So, yeah, I agree with what you're saying broadly, but also you look at specific examples and it's like one guy's decision makes Saad look bad, makes Wiedering look bad, makes Silvani look bad because Allen's taking a mark inside 50. It's like it was one bloke. Just do your role in that moment.
Yeah, and it's why it's so collective and it's so buy-in. I think that's why our back end of 23 that gets spoken about so much was so good, because it felt like everyone was always on the same wavelength. The footage that stands out to me was what was shown after the Collingwood game that I think I mentioned last week, of like Lewis Young doesn't track his man. All of a sudden there's a mismatch. And then, Sauce also goes to the goal square when that was the winger's role. And so there's Zach Williams is now guarding three guys, and you're like, just one or two players moving slightly to the wrong area breaks down everything. And it seems to be such a pattern for us right now that I'm not sure why there is this breakdown. Clearly, the guys on the field have to be able to execute. So there's a player problem. But then you go and ask, I guess, on the coaching side as well, what are we doing to implement it so these guys know where they need to be, so they're not making these incorrect calls? What are the standards upon if there is a player that continues to make errors? What's going on with that? So it's obviously a bit of everything. A lot more needs to go on the players for it, but definitely I'll watch this space over the next few weeks to see how we are addressing it, because there's going to be breakdowns. It feels like ours happen far too often, and they always lead to a goal.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I hope a lot of that can be addressed by like the consistency of the players in their roles and that kind of thing. Like, I mentioned it before. I'm not saying that Gov and Haynes have now worked it out and like they're like a perfect four where the four tools in defense works, but in this game, it felt like the synergy with them all was a lot clearer. Like they were all kind of minding their areas, minding their guys really well as like a back seven.
Yeah, I think my other negative was just, again, ball use. Wasn't clean throughout. There was a lot of, that first half in particular, we messaged after the game and said the game was dull. And it was like that at the first half. It was like, are we watching the two bottom teams in the competition right now? Because this is just calamity after calamity from everyone. So there's still that problem that is lingering. And I just don't know how you fix the execution side of it. The glass, half full is saying, is it simply confidence? And is it just going to take a bit of us executing to get it right? Or is it personnel? I don't know, but that kind of then ties into the other thing of inefficiency in front of goal. They're just
that was my bigger worry.
Execution all round just isn't there.
Yeah. I was more. I more made note of the opportunities in front of goal. Like that was. I mean, yeah, we put a big score on. Like, no, that's not a worry, and it could have been so much bigger. Particularly early, like I felt. Who were the guys? It was like Williams having his shot on goal, Motlop's shot on goal, Fogarty's early shot on goal. Just watching them walk in, and it's like, oh my God, these guys do not want to be taking these kicks right now.
Yeah. And even like Charlie handballing and missing a 2 meter away Zach Williams, and you're like, boys, how are we stuffing this up? But I noticed that as well. There was a lot of, and I was starting to yell at the TV and be that kind of guy, because there was one in particular that I noticed more than the others. Sam Walsh had a mark, and he just every 2 seconds was looking. And I'm like, take the shot. Can someone have confidence? It was him and Fogarty both had them, where I'm going, can you boys just have some confidence in yourself to take this shot? Fogarty misses. And in my head, it was because he was never looked confident in lining up and taking it himself. Luckily for Walshy, he took his. And my immediate thought was, so why weren't you confident? Why were you looking constantly for someone? I'm all for trying to get the best look on goal, but if you're 40 out, you need to be backing yourself in to get that done. And I'm not sure right now we've got enough of those players putting their hands up and saying, no, I'm taking this shot. Weirdly, the guy that loves to do it hasn't been executing, Will White, but I love that he takes the mark from 40 and just goes, nah, I'm going for it, boys. I think we need more of that in this squad.
Yeah, I concur. Yeah, and I know this wasn't a set shot, but Williams, when he was running into goal, like, have you ever seen someone look more casual, jogging in for the 50, thinking that he had 100 meters of space? It was those little things that I was making note of early, where it was like, have we come here with the right attitude? And is our mindset actually healthy enough to get a win here? Yeah.
No, it was a really big frustration. The game probably should have been over at quarter time, but we didn't put any score on the board. Definitely should have been over at halftime. And we just kept the Eagles in it for far too long. And we've seen that be an issue with us this entire season so far, with lack of efficiency and taking our chances when we do have a bit of momentum, when we're on top of the game. We dominated every single statistic you could possibly want by a lot. Still, we won by 71. It almost should have been 271 points if you saw the stat line. So I think, it's a weird one to try and fix. But until we are back to the efficient team, because I'm pretty sure I saw a stat, and I'll have to find this, but last season we were one of the most efficient teams with scores per inside 50. Whereas right now, everything's horrific. We're at 13% against Collingwood, 19% against the Dogs, 14% against Hawthorn, 13% against Richmond.
Wow.
Now, in some of those games, it doesn't look as bad, because I think we were 13%, Collingwood were like 15%, so at least both teams were garbage. But it's just so low at the moment. And a lot of them are good opportunities, which is probably my worrying point right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. All right. What other negatives do you have?
I got an interesting one.
My nose. Keep talking.
Go for it. One of them was that the game, it felt like much of a midfield domination as to how we won. We didn't necessarily systematically break down West Coast, kicked through them. So like we did at times, but majority of that game felt like we beat them with a contest. Cripps, Walsh, Hewitt, Chera, out, goal.
Yeah.
And the negative is simply, it's just hard to know how much we've improved and fixed because of that, because you're not going to get such an easy midfield to come up against. This season, our contested work hasn't been great. I think North's a really good test for it, because I rate their midfield quite highly. It's kind of everything else outside of that it drops off for North. That'll be the interesting test for us. But I think, my negative was simply we didn't dominate in a way that I felt we could take a lot from it, if that makes sense.
Which, to be fair to us, I think that was the last thing that we said on the show last week was that, yeah, we hope that we can take things like confidence out of this game, but we just don't see a world where we're going to be able to take kind of strategic game plan things from it. So yeah, your point is well made. But I don't know what we would have seen where I would have been like, oh yeah, we've worked that out.
No, it's a fair point. And I think that kind of goes back to the whole
right.
initial thing of what can you take out of this game? And I think for us right now, we're just trying to remain positive and enjoy the week. But there clearly is still a lot of work to be done. Now, I was going to delve into a bit more Voss chat on last week's big dissection of all things Carlton, but felt like the mood was nice and positive. We got to a really good point with it. And I really didn't want to bring it back down, being like, sorry, guys. It's almost like it would have been you're about to leave your high school English lesson, and I chime up in the back of the class and say, Miss, what about the homework this week that we haven't handed in? Let's go through it. That's what it would have felt like. So I've brought it in this week after a win. So it's a little bit nicer to talk about. But I think if we lost that game against West Coast, probably would have been curtains for Voss. That was my breaking point for it all.
Yeah.
I don't know how you felt, but knowing that we've now, got that win, we've been able to take one step forward. I guess what does that win do for the pressure on Carlton? Is it a weekly thing for you now with the pressure and Voss and the coaching? Do we have to put a month's form together? Where are you sitting in, I guess, that next breaking point and the buying of time? And would a West Coast of loss been that breaking point for you?
Wow. It's a really interesting thought and a good conversation to have. I feel like I'm going to develop my point of view as we talk about it. Because, like I've said, us losing this game seemed like that would have been a genuine nightmare that I could not even foresee. So I'm with you that it felt to me like I was thinking during the week, if we lose this, I just can't see how.
Yeah.
Because if we lose this game, I'm convinced that we are like there is something fundamentally broken here. So change has to happen. But if that was to happen, so then what? Like, is it like Hansen as the caretaker? Like, for example, like, is that what you would want if that happened?
Yeah, well, it's such an interesting discussion. And I think I was the same as you where we've both, and I think I've been more in the camp of, I'm really not convinced Voss is the guy, but there's no point making a move until later in the season, because when has anyone ever in the history of AFL brought in a coach early and turned it all around? You're just kind of saying it's all wrong, you've failed, and I just don't know the positive of it. Some people will say, well, if it just keeps getting bad, it's only going to continue to get bad under that regime. And that's probably where the West Coast breaking point would get to, where if we couldn't win that game, it was, well, I don't know how we get ourselves out of this hole. And do we just need the circuit breaker of, there you go, fresh start? Now that we've got this game and got the win, I think it does probably put me back to the bye to see where we sit. And then we have another conversation about it. There's a world where we lose the next 4 games, and maybe it's then, but it buys a bit of time to, okay, we've got a bit of confidence, we've got a breather, let's just see what can happen. And my expectations for the season aren't finals. I hope we can get there. I still believe there's a chance it can get there, but I just want to find out as much as I can and watch and see what they can do. Is kind of my perspective right now. I want to see what you can change and break away from it. I think that's kind of the time that's been bought. To answer your question about if we did make a move, what do we do? I don't like the idea of making it an assistant that we've currently already got, especially if it's so early in the season. And I know this happens a lot in soccer, in football. So
yeah,
could you not potentially bring in a guy like an Adam Simpson or a Longmire for a short term just to balance things out or get a different set of eyes on it from someone who has had a level of success to at least report back and say, this is what I've seen from your assistant coaches, from everything in the football department. Here's a bit of a report from the end of the season of what I think of the list of the players, and you've got a bit of an expert's opinion, rather than it coming in and saying, oh, you've got the job, we're bringing in this guy. More of just a, can you come in and let us know what's going wrong? Tell us whether the assistants are not up to scratch. Tell us whether the players aren't. Fresh set of eyes on it. And then, hey, if things are working really well, we like the relationship, we'll extend. But it's just an interesting perspective that I think the Prendergast boys have brought up probably in 2023 when it was all going wrong. Sort of stuck in my mind ever since of that'd be such an interesting thing for an AFL club to do.
Yeah, it is interesting for sure. There's just a lot of assumptions, I think, that kind of underpin that thought, which is one, like there's the person available that you would want to do that.
Yes.
One. Two, it's the assumption that I guess we're thinking that in that scenario, the leaders, whoever it is that is making that decision, whether it's like, Brian and Graham, in association with football department people, are saying, we think the only thing going wrong right now is the head coach. Right? Like that would be, because it wouldn't make sense if they think that the coach and the list is the problem. Like if they were thinking if they think we're not going to be able to do anything for the next 3 years and we're going to have to rebuild, what would be the benefit of that now? Wouldn't you just see this whole season through? We can't change the list. So
I think the idea would be, I get what you're saying. I think the only change you can move is a coach during the season. It's the only thing you can change. You can't change the list throughout the year. So it's your only lever to pull, I guess, is probably why it would happen.
Yeah.
And does a fresh perspective change anything? And I think in my scenario there, it's more clearly there's more issues, but the only thing that we can change right now is the coach. So can we bring in a high-level thinker who can let us know what potentially are other issues, because clearly those around can't make it work, if that makes sense for you.
I hear
it's a bit that way. I think if you're simply sacking and bringing in Hanson for the rest of the season, it's like, well, what's the point? That it just does nothing. Yeah, I can't see you getting that much better. Is there that much pressure that's removed? Are players going to sign a contract because we sacked Vossi? I don't know. I don't see the benefit of that unless you've got some maneuver. And the interesting part is obviously in soccer, they move managers, bring the next guy in, and things seem to be fine, adjusting.
Yeah.
Never really happens in the AFL where a club would kind of mid-season sack a Voss, all of a sudden Adam Simpson's the guy, and he just takes them on the next 3 years. I wonder why that is tactically, why you can't seemingly bring in a coach mid-season and just run it like normal, why it is seen in our sport as such a, you have to get to the end of the season. Because I know that makes sense for the assistant coaches that you want to bring in. But if there are senior coaches, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember a time where mid-season they've really brought in an ex-coach that's there to properly be the guy.
I'm trying to think of that example.
Yeah. I wonder why it doesn't happen as much.
Yeah. It's a really interesting commentary. The NBA is similar to the soccer analogy, which is that, at times a new coach can come in and, mid-season turn things around in that way. And that is the circuit breaker. And they look to it as a circuit breaker. It just doesn't feel like that for me, for Carlton. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine that.
Yeah. I think in just a high-level AFL chatter, rather than it just being Carlton in this sense, it's strange because you'd almost, if you know that, say it's Adam Simpson because he's someone that's available right now. And us or a Melbourne sack a coach right now, and all of a sudden they come in. It gives you a half a season without any pressure. You get half a season to almost treat it as a preseason, slowly implement your game plan, more time with the players, learn before the end of the season who you want to keep around, what personalities do you like, you don't. Then you can make list changes rather than coming in at the end of the season and getting like a week without knowing any of the players and having to make moves. It just feels like from a club perspective, if you were going to go down this route of bringing in someone who isn't currently coaching, you should do that the earlier the better. Then you don't have that pressure immediately in the first season of this guy's got to turn us around. It's like, oh, he's already had a bit of time when things have been bad. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah. I feel like I need to have a look back at like, the last 10 years of those coaching changes and whether any of those were actually feasible. Like if I think back to how early did we know that Teague was going to be gone? I'm trying to think back to 2021. Like, were we having these chats midway through 2021 being like, we know that he's going to be gone. Can we just bring in Vossi or Ross Lyon or Kingsley or whoever it was? It's hard to
I need to go back and I feel like I've erased that whole season from my memory because
good thing we have an entire probably 25 hours of documented
absolutely
conversations about it.
Was 2020 this is like the year that like Cottrell kicked the goal against Sydney and we won that game?
That was 2020.
Was that 2020? Yeah. So that was kind of the season where there was some good, there was some bad. We're like, okay. And clearly 2021, it went to shit. But it's interesting to know how early things start to go bad with some of these coaches. But let us know your thoughts on that and what your kind of breaking point with the coaches are at the moment. Does this win change anything for you in where you see this and giving just more time this season? And your thoughts on potentially bringing in a coach to try and steer the ship. It's a really intriguing discussion. But let's move on to the votes. The Navy Blue Corner Blue Bagger Badge of Honor. Lockie, you're 3, 2, and 1 this week.
I was going to get really controversial today because listeners may remember that in round 1, you went ahead and gave all 6 votes
Absolutely.
to Jack Silvani.
I'll still stand by that. Tell me anyone else that deserved to vote that game.
I wanted to do the opposite in this one. I was like, I feel bad giving only 3 players votes. I want to give single votes to 6 players, but I'm not going to do that.
Maybe we do that one year. We have the entirety of the votes and you can divvy that up to whoever you want.
23 votes, Silvani round 1 runs away with it. I'm going to be doing this off the spot because it was actually really hard. I'm giving 3 to Walsh though. I thought just night and day, like of what we've seen from him. Like he had burst. Not to mention obviously the 3 goals that he put through as well. So I had to give him the 3. In terms of our biggest overperformer for 2, I put Dirds. I just, I had very little expectation for him coming into this game and for him to be so effective. Had to give him 2. 1 I could give to so many people, but I think I just have to give it to George Hewitt.
God, we are aligned, Lockie. This is beautiful. I've done the exact same for the same reasons. I wanted to give votes to Matt Carroll because I really liked his performance. Cooper Lord probably not in the votes, but I liked what I saw. Ollie Hollins was probably one that was very close to votes. He's one who we were having a brief discussion before we started recording about his position and that he still played a lot in the half back, but he found the ball so much higher up and we loved that and we loved what he was doing. And I guess that kind of goes perfectly into talking about North and changes. Do you think we need to get Ollie higher? And does that mean wing? Because we're probably not going to see him so high up on the field against another opposition. Where do you sit in the Ollie Hollins discussion on his position? Because I thought he's been one of our best players the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hadn't really thought about backline changes, to be honest, in terms of this one. I felt like kind of run it back with the setup that we had. Obviously, we've got 2 force changes that we know of right now.
Yes.
So, and there's definitely a way that you could move Ollie up the ground. Like, is that what you would be doing for your changes?
It's something I've wanted to the last couple of weeks, and it's something I think I'll do this week again.
Okay.
It's then just what else happens in that back line. I was big on swinging Zach Williams down back. Doesn't feel like that's something they're going to do, so I'm just going to take that out of it. So that'd mean, Wiedering and Silvani, the 2 down there. You've got Sard, you've got Carroll. If you take Ollie away, it kind of means still in there at the moment is McGovern and Haynes, and there's no one else taking that spot. So it kind of makes it difficult. I think I'd maybe have a bit more of a rotation with a few players and have him some on the wing, some off halfback. But I don't know. I really don't want to keep going with these 4 key defenders. But we then just had Gov's best game for the season. Nick Haynes has played really solid.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure how it's going to go against a different opposition. I feel like we need to be smaller. We need to have more run. But it's going to be hard to make changes after they played so effectively as a defensive collective.
It's true. I didn't see any of the North game yesterday either. I don't know how big they're playing at the moment. Like, would that impact you? I don't know. I feel comfortable after this performance running back the back line with Haynes and McGovern. They were the 2 that were kind of on our chopping block last week.
Yeah, they're going to run it back. So I don't know how much me saying I do or don't want it changes anything really right now. Just as I get North's team up, because I saw a bit of the first half before our game.
Larky
They've obviously got Darling. They've got Larky. They don't really have anything else down there at all. It does worry me being tall against a team like North that do have some zippy players around there. Zerha, Sheasel, Curtis, Simpkin can bob up, Dersma. They've got a few of those nippy players, but I think they're gonna back it in. The only other person to possibly bring in is Jordan Boyd. VFL didn't play a game this week, so can you really bring someone in without that form? I'm not certain. But obviously the big 2 things that somehow we haven't touched on at all, which is probably because we've been trying to be positive so far.
True. Oh my God. I didn't even think of this as negatives.
Yeah, Harry Mackay, obviously, and the concussion immediately in the game, just the worst possible thing to happen for him. And then things were going so well, Lockie, and now we've lost another player to a season-ending injury. Brody Kemp, Achilles. Oh, what do you do? And how big does particularly, because at least the Harry one, fingers crossed, concussions are still a bit iffy, but you'd say he'll be back in a couple of weeks. Kemp obviously out for the year. How big a loss is that?
Yeah, I can't believe that this wasn't front of mind for our discussion today. Yeah, I've said from the preseason, I've been really bullish on him being forward. Really excited to see what the 3 of them could do together. It was going to be our first opportunity to see that. It was interesting that Harry was going to be clearly doing some rucking, which we both wanted to see. Yeah, just we can't have nice things, as they say.
No.
So very, very, very sad for Kempy.
So on that, who replaces them and what are your kind of team changes this week? Because there are a few players that are available that could come in. Vossi highlighted Pitternet as someone who's fit that could come in. Akers missed through illness. Elijah is good to play. Lewis Young, probably another that can put his hand up to play a forward role. Any of those come in and who replaces Harry and Kemp, most importantly?
Yeah, Vossi was definitely buttering us up there with the Pitto comment. I think that's a lock. I definitely think that will happen. And I'm okay with that too, with, going up against Sherry.
Is that your move? Would you do that if Vossi didn't say anything? Was that your move?
Yeah, I think so. With Mackay going down and Kemp as well, TDK also looked like, I don't know whether he got knocked a couple of times late in the game, like he didn't run out the last quarter well. So we flagged this preseason. TDK is not going to number one ruck every game, and we don't want that either. So I'd be bringing in Pito for Harry. Then you may disagree on this one. I would give Doc a week. I think
he was
whether
better.
it's yep. Whether it's a game in the twos or whether you genuinely just give him a week of rest, I think that would be a good move. And I'd bring Akers in for him.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I'm not opposed to bringing Pitto in, but I think I'd bring Lewis Young in because I think Pitto is a better player, but I've seen Lewis Young this year and he's been serviceable. Whereas Pitto, I'm probably in the mind of, I want to see you at least run out a game in the VFL first before you come in. But look, neither are game-winning moves for me. Either of those
you're not worried,
coming in.
You're not worried about Sherry just, I don't know, just TDK having to deal with that for like a full game.
Well, I think that's where Lewis Young can be the second ruck. So I see Lewis Young being capable to play that role. Whereas, I don't know, just the idea of DeConing forward again, I just don't love it. And that's what I think when Pitto comes in. Like preseason, the first preseason game where DeConing isn't even rucking, he's in the forward line and Pitto's doing all the ruck. I'm like, this is just not the balance I want. And I worry with Pitto in the sense of he's either number one rucking or I don't think he's in this team.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I don't understand it as much. Like that's why I'd rather have a second hitter who can go forward and be somewhat capable rather than Pitto who he's just on the bench or he's rucking, because you want DeConing to be your number one. So I just don't know how that balance works. And our midfield just looked good. Do you make too many changes like a big Pitto in there? I feel like that changes the dynamic of the midfield after we've just had our best midfield showing. So that's why I'm hesitant on it for a week. That's probably my perspective.
I get that. But then we play Geelong the week after. So if I wouldn't like, that would be a game that I feel very comfortable with TDK solo rucking, for example. I don't know. I'm just trying to, I don't know. I just hate us to get to round 10 and then it's like TDK's number one rucked every game. He's now injured because we've worked him into the ground. I don't know. I'm just trying to avoid that. But I agree with you. If this is our grand final against North, run it back. Yeah. Bring it in. Sure.
Look, if you were to pencil in like 5 games for the season where Pitto could play, this would probably be one of them.
Yeah, okay.
So I totally get your point on that. Apart from, so I'd have Lewis Young in for Mackay. I'd have Elijah in for Kemp. So
me too. That was my third change.
I don't think Ashton's there just yet. So just allow more movement inside 50. There's enough smalls. You've got White, you've got Durden, Fogarty, Motlop. I think Fogarty probably would have been dropped if Kemp didn't get injured. Probably would have been my move for Elijah, but he holds his spot because we don't have really anyone else. And then, I've gone Doherty as well out, Akers in. Now, Akers hasn't had amazing form, but I think he's been one of our better players the last few years. So I'll give him a couple of poor weeks when everyone else has been poor.
Do you think he was ill?
At least, I have no idea. Surely something. I got no idea, mate. Who knows our injury reports? What are you thinking?
I reckon there's a fair chance that they just gave him a week.
And just managed him. After that, didn't want to be omitted, so we'll just say illness. It happens a lot. So. These are little things in football clubs. But do you have anything else on this North game that you want to touch on before we wrap this lovely review of a win up this week?
All I was going to say was I'd also elevate Lord to a full match for this one against North. And at the moment, I reckon Mike Williams sub.
I think I had Fogarty as the sub, but I didn't feel strongly about it at
I just
all.
feel like Williams is a player that, like, if he comes on at 3/4 time, let's say there's no injuries, you could then deploy him anywhere. And if he gives you one full quarter, like, that's an exciting sub. Either that or Elijah, probably. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot.
No other comments on North, though. I'm scared. I'm going to be watching it in the Netherlands with Robbo. So very excited. Good Friday.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a big game. And we probably didn't think this at the start of the season, but how things change. No. All of a sudden, it is a blockbuster clash. But the boys have got some confidence off the back of a big 71 points, I think it was, in the end against West Coast. We needed it. My God, we needed it as fans. Let us know your thoughts to everything that we have covered in this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, in the comments below. If you're listening in audio form, at Navy Blue Corner on the socials. Links will be in the show notes, in the description. So you won't have to go anywhere else. Nice and easy. But yes, that is wrapping this episode up. Let's hope we can start to turn it around. This is our round 2 from here on out. Up the bloody baggers. See you guys next time.